Hi guys, so welcome. This is the live Q&A. So during this session you can ask questions that you have about any of the material that's on the website or just general dog or cat or other pet questions. So I'll be happy to answer those. I just wanted to verify we're good. Um, so I'll be taking your questions. I'll also be answering questions that come from the pre-submission. So you can always go in and type your question on this page, and it doesn't show up on the page. It just sends the message to us. So you're always welcome to just put that question in, and you'll get a little submission approved message just to give you information that it did go through. And then that goes into our queue. So basically, what happens during the session is I'll be answering questions that come in live. So any questions that we actually have during the session, I will prioritize and answer those first. But then if and when we run out of questions, I will go to our question queue, member question queue, and I will answer those questions. So just wanted to take a look here. Yep, good, excellent. Glad you guys can hear me. Thanks, Beck, that worked. Um, all right, so basically, again, I just go over questions that you guys have and then go over the queue. So we'll start off with switching my screen here. Um, where did it go? I'm sorry. We'll get there. All right, so we'll start off with this question from Sal. What is the best harness for my dog? So the best harness for your dog totally depends on the application that you want to use that harness in. But generally speaking, you want a harness that fits really well on your dog. So every dog has a little bit of a different body. So you want to find a harness that fits well for them. And by fits well, I mean that they've got good range of motion. So it doesn't really bind in the armpits. So it should sit a little further down for them. So not in the armpit area. They should be able to move freely. And it should not block the trachea, so they shouldn't be having pressure here. So, for example, sometimes you'll see harnesses. Let's see if this works. You'll see harnesses where it's just basically like a figure eight. So there's a loop around the belly, but effectively all of the pressure is really on the neck. So we don't want that style. But basically, the best harness in terms of just general walking, again, there's a variation because it works, whatever works for your dog. But I like having clips or harnesses that have a clip on the front and on the back so that if you need to, you can have 2 points of contact. So you can clip a double-ended leash like the Symmetry line or something else, clip to the front and a clip to the back. And that way, most of the information you're using for, slowing down, for example, might happen on the back. But if you're needing to turn them or if they're really starting to lunge or something, then you have the aspect of the front if you need that. Whenever possible, I like to just walk a dog with the back harness so that they have total free range of motion. So that's kind of where you would work up to for your dog if they're really lungy. So if they're a puppy or something that's sort of relatively easy to just hold on to, then a back clip harness by itself is totally fine. But anytime that you need maybe a little bit extra control, having the 2 points of contact would be good. So examples of harnesses that have 2 points of contact, the balance harness, the perfect fit harness. Both of those are good in the sense that they're out of the armpits as well, and you can fit them nicely to the shape of your dog. The extra dog harness is good. So there's lots of brands that might work. But I really also am a big fan of the fleece padding, so it keeps it from slipping around. So if you have a temperature there wherever you are that works for that, that would be good to have a fleece harness if possible. But definitely, mostly the most important part is the fit, and then it doesn't feel too big for your dog. For example, comparing the perfect fit and the balance harness, the perfect fit for some dogs is a little too bulky, so it depends on the dog. The balance harness is really light. Basically, test your dog. So if you put the harness on and they rub around the house, try to get it off, that may be a sign that it's not the ideal harness. The other thing in terms of harnesses to keep in mind is how it's attached. So if your dog has to put his head through, most of the harnesses are that way, and most dogs are fine with that, of targeting their head through. Some dogs are not fine with that, so it's better to have a harness that's adjustable on the neck strap. So you can actually clip over the neck rather than having them go put their head through. So for example, my dog Peanut, if the whole part is kind of small, then it pushes on his ears, and he actually has sensitive ears. So if it's a small neck piece, then I would prefer to have it clip open. So like the Perfect Fit or the balance harness both have those options as well. So, all right, I think I've answered that question. Let's go ahead and again, if you have any questions, you can post those at any time, so you don't have to wait for me to say, "Do you have any questions?" And you can even repost questions that you might have put into the forum area or the clubhouse area. I'd be happy to re-answer those using this aspect of speech. I can obviously talk for longer. All right. And if you've been to our sessions before, the posting the question does not reset your page. So you're safe there in terms of you won't miss any of the content when you're posting the question. All right. So let's see. All right. So Mike says, I have a dog that pees every time I get home. I've tried to have him sit. What else should I do? So that's a good question. This is often called submissive urination or stress urination. But basically, it's something that dogs do a lot of times when there's a greeting that's too exciting. And it's very typical in young puppies, and usually something that they grow out of, especially if they're raised with positive reinforcement. Now, you had said that you tried to have him sit when you get home, and depending on how you've taught sit, it may or may not be actually helping. So, if the sit has been taught as a stationary behavior that earns positive reinforcement, that is great. So, it gives the dog something specific to do. That's definitely one thing. I'll give you some other ideas, but basically, it gives the dog something to do, gets them in a position where they're less likely to urinate, and then it also has them thinking about food. They're also less stressed in general when they're in working mode. So that's a good possibility. Touch is another cue that's really easy for the dogs to do in those situations. Touch is nice because you can also use it to move them to another space. And with dogs who have urination problems when you come home, one thing that you might want to do is just simply move them to a place where if they do go to the bathroom, that it's not as hard to clean up. So for example, you can greet them in the backyard. So you can do that with just a recall cue, or you can do it with touch. So you move them to that position. Oops, sorry. So the touch cue, basically you say touch and the dog touches his nose to your hand. So I have a video on that for targeting, or if I don't already, I will soon. And then basically though, with the touch, it's nice because you can use it to move them anywhere. So, and again, it has them in a more cognitive state, so they're thinking a little bit more, and therefore less likely to be stressed out and urinating. So greeting outside or greeting on a place where it's easier to clean up. Avoiding corrections. So if you give corrections, that tends to make the dogs even more stressed. So if you were to be the dog and sort of think why he's doing this, it's sort of like, I'm a puppy, don't kill me. So if they're already a little bit nervous and that's why they're urinating, then getting a correction will only make the problem worse. And in most cases, that is why they're urinating, is they're feeling a little bit stressed about the reunion. So immediately taking the dog for a walk, doing targeting, not correcting. So if they do happen to urinate, we just say, no, outside, and show them where to go. Make sure that you're reinforcing for going outside. So giving reinforcers for going to the bathroom while they're out there, eliminating while they're out there. And then the other thing another thing to keep in mind is that there could be a urinary tract infection. So if it's not just at this time, but it's at other times that the dog is eliminating just kind of randomly, a urinary tract infection would make it harder to hold their bladder. So checking with a veterinarian is a good idea. Anytime you have urination problems, there's a possibility that it's health related, or perhaps they're drinking too much water because of some medication that they're on, for example. And then finally, for the submissive urination, the other thing is depending on how long they've been home alone. So if the dog has been home alone for 10 hours, then he can barely hold his bladder, and so is very likely to urinate. If he's only been gone, you've been gone for 4 hours, or you've been gone, and there's a pad for the puppy to go on. So let's say it's a 6-month-old puppy. Usually they can hold it for 4 hours. That would be a reasonable time if they've got enough space to move around and not, be totally constricted. Um, then, so kind of just watching that time that they're not alone for too long so that they're really having to build up needs to go to the bathroom. Okay, I think we've done that one to death. If you do have any follow-up questions, you can feel free to submit those. And but this was pre-submitted, so my guess is that he would not have a follow-up. All right. And if you have other questions, definitely let me know. With these Q&As, if we do happen to run out of questions, we'll just stop early. Um, I will probably just, you know, put up a thing that says I'm here, but I won't necessarily be just chatting. So, but if you have questions about navigating the site or pet questions, let me know. All right. So another question, thank you, is what's the best way to bring a rescue dog home? Any tips for the first 24 hours? All right. So, a rescue dog is a dog you've adopted from a shelter or a rescue organization, or just another person who happens to have already had that dog and then can't keep it. Sorry about that. So, let's say that it depends on actually whether you have a pet in your home already or not, some of the things that you might do differently. But one thing is to make sure that you are giving the dog an easy routine to follow, not a lot of hectic things going on. So there will be shopping that you need to do for a new pet. So make sure to do that shopping first. Now, some of it you need to do based on who the pet is. So you might need to go buy a harness of the right size, for example. But things like dog beds and whatnot, if you kind of have narrowed down the size of dog that you already want to get, you can do that shopping in advance. What ideally you wouldn't be doing is just sort of having the dog in that slip lead, walking around the pet store, frantically trying to figure out what to buy. But obviously, you also don't just want to leave the dog in your car because we don't know yet necessarily if there's separation anxiety issues. So ideally, you've got a couple of people. One of them can be, walking the dog around or babysitting the dog in the car while you finish up your shopping. But you're going to need a bowl for water. You're going to need a harness. You'll need a bed. You'll probably need a crate, actual dog food. Now, dog food, you can make your own food or you can purchase it at the store. Look for good quality food rather than something that you buy at the grocery store. There is a video that I have coming out that's all about what does a dog need. So definitely go through that when you have a chance as soon as that's online. But mostly in terms of activities for the dog, uh, things like sniffing are really good for reducing arousal. So when you first get to your house, if there aren't any other pets, letting the dog explore the area, and not having this constant, you're not constantly bugging them. So especially if they're maybe nervous of you, letting them just explore the area and come up to you rather than you approaching the dog all the time. Let them be the one that chooses to come up to you for greetings. When you do pet them, make sure to watch our petting video and our videos about body language because that will give you information in terms of how to best handle them physically. Let me just navigate to that. So if you go to member library and then family safety actually has a good set of videos about kind of when you first have a dog. So how to set boundaries, how to keep children safe, and then petting and some information about body language. We do also have a category for rescue dogs. Let me go back to that. So I believe so anyway. Yep, rescue dogs. So we've got a category here. I'm going to use this view. So you would want to make sure to get your home safe in advance. So puppy proofing, even if it's not a puppy. So even though it's maybe an adolescent dog or even an adult dog, Puppy proofing is still something you would want to make sure to do. So it's not really technically puppy proofing, but watching for wires and all the things that dogs might get. So puppy proofing, keeping in mind the cues that you would want to teach, but you're not doing that in those first 24 hours. In your first 24 hours, you'll be reinforcing behavior that you like. So anytime you see something that fits in with the lifestyle that you have, you can be reinforcing that with some of their food. You don't want to switch their diet right away, so you would actually make sure to do that in stages. So switch their diet to their new food by having maybe 1/5 of the food be new and 4/5 of it be the stuff that's given to you from the shelter, or that the shelter has told you that they're using. Almost always that's a food that is not the best quality. It just happens to be inexpensive. So usually people would want to switch over to a more nutritional food, excuse me, that doesn't have as many fillers, and so therefore you have less poop to pick up. So anyway, information about crate training is in here. You may need to crate train your dog. If you're, it's just always a good idea to crate train so you have that. House training, a lot of dogs may come to you not house trained, especially in the space that you're in. It's just new to them, so you have to kind of go through house training. It would be in fast forward compared to what you do with a puppy, because puppies just take longer to learn that. And then again, there's body language information in here. And I will have some information about tug, which I'm not sure why it's in that category. Actually, it sort of applies, but I mean, it applies in the sense that we do play tug with our rescue dogs, but that's not really the first thing that you would be necessarily thinking of. All right. So definitely take a look at the rescue dogs category. Other things would be just kind of keeping things low key. So don't have company over that night. If you go on a walk, to have a walk where you're just, following the dog around using your long line. There's the bat leash skills are a great way to be walking your dog. So if you go to, let's see, where is it? Go to the campus store and then to feature films. Sorry. So talk with me, walk with me. Those are all good in terms of having a rescue dog. But I'm also specifically and problem solving, but I'm thinking in terms of walking would be good to have. So this is a video that you could purchase from the campus store, and it has information about walking skills. So one of the biggest complaints people tend to have about dogs, especially with the dog that they adopt as an adult, because they're just so strong and powerful, is the pulling on leash. So this would be a good resource for that. So this is not part of the member videos, but you do get a discount as a member. So, all right. And then other things to think about in terms of your rescue dog is maybe that there is already someone at the home. So if you do have another dog or cat, then make sure to do that introduction slowly. We do have a video coming out for members that is about how to introduce a new dog to your home, whether you've got cats there or other dogs or children or whatever. So definitely take a look at that when it comes out. But essentially, meeting on neutral territory so that you go for a walk together and then get them used to each other, a good half hour to an hour. If you can walk off leash in the woods, so much the better. Probably having the new dog on a really long line so that you can bring them back if needed. Having treats with you so you can reinforce the dog for checking in with you. But anyway, so having a greeting that's in more neutral territory is good, because then that means that your dog is less likely to be reactive. And then having the new rescue dog then come into the home. And usually I have the new dog come into the home first so that you don't have the dog who's already there sort of, in his territory guarding, and then the other dog comes in. Even dogs who are pretty mild, there's some quantity of guarding. So you want to just sort of prevent that whenever possible by having them meet each other more than once if possible. And then, coming into the home, and then, really making sure to watch for things like you're feeding separately, not creating issues at the door. So if the dogs are going out the door at the same time, either making sure to open it really wide or cueing both dogs to sit so you can use a treat to lure if needed, if there's not resource guarding. But definitely getting dogs to get along, setting off on the right note is important. So having that first meeting and taking regular walks together is really going to help you. They don't have to be together right at first. So in the home, it may be too soon to just immediately bring them together. So you might need to do what we call crate and rotate, where one dog is in, away in a bedroom while the other dog is out in the house, and then you can switch. So they're not together unless they're really closely supervised. But that's more in that other video that's coming out. All right. So actually, I'll go ahead and answer your question, Beck. That's a good one. I've been curious to know about Peanut's role in developing BAT. Right. So Peanut, let's see, he's got kind of a long history of reactivity. I got him as a puppy at 10 weeks from a shelter. And I selected him at the time because he was sort of in the middle of the litter in terms of bravery. So he was, approaching me, but not mobbing me. So kind of, picking him for what I thought to be good reasons. But unfortunately, the entire litter was probably shell shocked. And so everything was sort of skewed in terms of data on the side of nervousness. Sorry, this is probably longer than you want for a question, but I'll answer it kind of in the big version. So, all right. And so, sorry, there's another thing going in. Basically, then I was learning to be. I was a new trainer at that point and learning more as time went on. And I did a puppy class with Peanut, and then ended up doing sort of 2 puppy classes at a time, and then 2 adolescent classes at a time. And his knowing what I know now, basically, I think I was kind of overwhelming him. But I also was using classical conditioning. So anytime he would see something that was stressful, we would then associate that with treats. Anytime he saw something that I thought later he might think was stressful, I would then associate that with treats. And it did help for quite a few issues of his, but his reactivity to people, particularly, was not being fixed. So, and it was manageable in the sense that if I was working with him, I could keep his attention and he would be fine or look fine. But mostly what was happening is that he was it was like he was sort of split into 2, right? So with the context of working, he was fine. Without that context, he had no skills for interacting with people he didn't know. And so then I was always kind of looking for a better way to work with him. I watched a video on CAT. So CAT is constructional aggression treatment, and it was at the time something that was useful to me because it was giving the idea of that you don't always have to just be shoving them full of treats. You can actually let them process some information and do a behavior and have a natural consequence. Now with CAT, it's more stressful and it's more artificial. It's not really what I would recommend at all right now. But it was definitely something that got me started on that road. So worked with Peanut doing what I thought was CAT, and that very quickly morphed into the first version of BAT. So I did that with adult humans, and then we worked with kids once I really had narrowed in on what BAT 1.0 would look like. And Peanut was fearful, so his reactivity was all based on fear toward people. And I was not sure whether that would apply to dogs who weren't really showing fear signs, but were like running in and being part of a fight if there was one. So Sagan, who was the other dog in the household at the time, I did BAT with her with dogs, and it definitely I was really pleased with the fact that it was making a difference in terms of her approach distance was also going down. So her amount of comfort with dogs was improving too. And then also we did, let's see. Yeah, so if you've seen the BAT videos, Sagan, the pit bull that's there, or pit bull boxer mix, you'll see some work with her as well. But Peanut, since that was your specific question, was part of the original BAT version, but then I've also then used working with him to develop the second version of BAT. And in the second version of BAT, it's much more, but it's much more flowy. We're not marking and moving away consistently. What we're doing is more allowing the dog to explore and check stuff out and move in a more natural way. And I found when I started doing that with Peanut that his threshold, what I thought was his threshold for working with dogs, was nowhere near where it actually was. So when I really let him be the one who chose how far away we were, in terms of by watching his body language and making sure that he's not going too close, um, then it turns out he would rather be much further away. So one thing that I really try to harp on with people with doing bat now is to not lead the dog forward, because that's what I was doing with the original version of bat. So after we moved away, then I was like, okay, let's do another trial, and then we would go forward again. But giving the dog the opportunity to decide when to go forward again, you actually find that the threshold distance is much different than you would otherwise think. So, yeah. So, and then, like I said, so that work with Peanut was with dogs. With the new second version of that, with the previous version, we sort of worked through his adult issues and his kid issues. And then context is important. So, you would always want to, I don't know why I'm saying this here, but here we go. But make sure that, when you do work on an issue with your dog, that you also then vary the context. So with kids, for example, with Peanut, we haven't done a lot of sessions indoors or like in my own house. So we've done it in public places or other people's houses. And so he actually still does need more bat setups in my own house with kids. So anyway, that's that. Any other questions on that? Okay. So we're just going to do, whoops, let me just switch over back to the member library. One thing I wanted to point out about the member library is that we have it arranged by categories, and then but those categories are something that can also be member determined. So if there's any categories that you think that, or any videos or category that you would like me to make, let me know. Or if there's a different view of how you would like to see the member library, let me know on that as well. All right. So Alexis had a question. Let me switch to this. So Alexis had a question. Except for sprinkles, Lucy seems to start working around treats. Could you talk about that? Yeah. So working mode is definitely something that it has its uses. So when you actually just need to sort of get through a situation, working mode is great. I find that when you're trying to actually teach a full interaction, then that's different from working mode. So, for example, if you even just take your own dog and how they interact with you when you have treats and you have the possibility of giving them to them, how they behave then with how they behave when you don't have treats and you're just on the couch and they're nuzzling in and looking for petting or whatever else. So that the level of interaction, the skill of the interaction is totally different when they're looking for an external reinforcer versus when they're looking for just a reinforcer that matches that situation without the food. The arousal level also goes up when there's food around. For most dogs, if you have a heart rate monitor on, you can see the heart go up as soon as you bring the food out. So, yeah. So with Lucy, so you had a question about her that she's working around treats. It's kind of just that you would then want to do your bat setups. If you are doing bat setups, you would want to do those when she does not think that there's treats around, and you also specifically want to teach her an all done signal, right? So you may have that already, but an end of session cue where you say, you were training, and then you say all done, and that means no more treats are coming. So basically, you teach this by just saying or giving the all done cue just before or just as you're finishing with any session. You can actually use this for begging at the table or anything else as well. So just this means no reinforcement is coming from me at this point. I even use the all done signal with my neighbor's dogs. So my neighbor's got a puppy, and I'm trying to make sure that Peanut and the puppy get along as they age, as the puppy ages. And so I'll do a little bit of work with the puppy, and then I'll do all done. Or if I'm walking by with Peanut and I'm not going to greet the puppy, I'll still do all done for the puppy to give that information. And it definitely helps in terms of the frustration barking. So if I don't give the all done, and I just keep walking, then the dog thinks, well, maybe this time she's going to give me treats. And then you can see the arousal start to go up. And when you do all done, then the arousal goes down. So that's one thing, is so to teach Lucy an all done cue if you haven't already, and to also watch how you hold your hands during your session. So, for example, if you're walking around and you're like this, that tends to put the dog more in working mode, because it's sort of like heel, right? So you're cueing the heel with your hands, and that's a signal that food is possible if they only just work hard enough. So that's one thing. Also, when you're walking around, that you're walking more casually, that you're looking not just directly at her, but you're looking kind of off to the side. So sorry. So you're looking kind of like, so like if she's here, that you're looking more here. So she's in your peripheral vision, so you can see her, but you're not making eye contact with her as you would if you're working, right? And if you do make eye contact, you could praise and move on or whatever, but just being really casual. So the other thing is that different quality of treats may bring out working mode more than others. So that might be something. You do usually want to have treats kind of somewhere around in case there's an emergency. So that might be in a container that's like on a tree, or, up in a tree or on top of a car or something. All right. So there's another question from Pam. Any advice about frustrated graders on leash? I try to vary when moving forward or back, and sometimes walk parallel, giving reinforcers for looking at me or offering calm or sit. Sometimes Kai does not want food. All right, so let me just make sure I have the question. Right. Yeah, so basically what you want, so when you're working with a dog who might have frustration issues, you can do BAT. So it's very similar to the way that you would do BAT with any other dog, except you would be potentially trying to use more external reinforcers as they get close. So so if you're here, right, then they're starting to really want to do greetings. So really making sure that if you aren't greeting, that you're guiding kind of, or more in an arc. Let's see if I can get this on the camera. Anyway, guiding more in an arc rather than just directly at the dog. And that you're using more external reinforcers. So with a regular dog, with a dog who has fear issues, you would be using mark and move. So marking when they maybe engage or disengage, so they go in to sniff the rear, for example, you might click that, move away, and give a treat. Maybe like 5 or 10 times if there's fear, but you would be doing it more times if there's frustration, because we need to build up a reason. Now, if Kai is not interested in the food, you're probably maybe working up too close too soon. So that's a possibility, is that it's just that Kai is over threshold, and you actually just need to take more time for the approach. Or it may mean that you can do, you want higher value reinforcers like freeze dried chicken, or something, crazy delicious that stinks to you but smells good to your dog. Tossing the treats can make them more interesting than just handing them. So if you say find it, and toss the treat, that may actually then get the dog to go after it, versus if it was just handed to him or her, then it might just get spit out. So, but if the dog is not interested in eating, it probably does mean that you're too close, and so you would do more just like the walking parallel or the following, until it's sort of like, all right, it's no big deal to be this close to that other dog. So you really want to be working at a distance where, if you did give food, they would take it based on their arousal level. Now, some dogs, as soon as they go outside, they can't eat anyway, and so you can't quite use that as the right metric. But generally speaking, if your dog would eat treats outside and then doesn't when you're trying to do your training, you're probably too close in your training. Other things would be using other kinds of reinforcers. So you might be wanting to use toys or scritches, or like one of those whippet toys. That does tend to increase arousal when you use a toy. So you would want to use the toy, walk it off, relax, and then go back and do the greeting again, rather than just doing a tug toy and then running back to the greeting. That can sort of make the arousal go too high, and then also the style of grading would be less appropriate. So I'm not sure if let me make sure I answered that as well. Right. But yeah, so the parallel walking and the following are huge for working on reactivity, especially, well, actually, not just for frustration, but yeah, for all of them. But if you do find that that last, 5 meters or whatever is, or 10, 15 feet is too sticky, so you try to get there and the dog just pulls right toward, then definitely doing more following. You can put a fence in between, so if there's a chain link fence or something, having the dogs walking along the fence gives a little bit more of a barrier. Trees also make a good barrier, so even though they really could get to each other, still having that kind of barrier will help if there's like a row of trees or a row of hedges where they could see each other but not quite get to each other. You can also do things like, if it's just frustration and they would otherwise be fine with the dog, let them play first, get it out of their system, and then do your bath session. So they're getting used to the concept of being on leash without that level of arousal. Because what you have right now is just a big habit that if I see a dog, it's like crazy, and so you want to do something that sort of gives them a chance to have a different experience of life. So, however you can manufacture that. So, exercising first before your session, whether it's with that other dog or not. So, having them run, do find it, doing, treadmill, doing some, training, just so they're mentally more tired. So, hopefully that answers your question. Sorry, that's kind of a long version. So, all right. Any other questions from the folks who are here? Okay. Let me check real quick. I've got some questions in another spot. Okay, sorry about that. All right. All right. Oh, sorry. Before we get to that one, we'll do this one. You're welcome, Pam. All right. So, question what about dogs is, so one more dog question is, how can I give my dog a bath? So if you have, um, so basically for bathing, you want to make sure not to bathe too frequently. If you bathe more than about once a month, the oil in their skin actually starts to dry up or kind of get funky. And so they get dry skin. And so then you actually have a bigger problem. And potentially that it smells from that. So you can use like the wipes, or just wash them, dry them off with or wipe them off with a wet towel. So if you take a towel and wring it out, you could teach your dog to go rub himself on that towel. So that's a good way to get sort of an in-between bath time. And then when you actually do have a bath, you want to make sure it's not slippery. So that you put down a rug or a mat or something in the bath. Having a phone shower is ideal. So you have something that plugs into your shower, so you can do that, or a scoop. Definitely don't have just your main shower on. That's going to be too scary to the dog. Set your temperature up before you get there so you're not accidentally getting them really cold. And don't have them jump into the bathtub. So ideally, you would want to teach them to let you lift up so they can jump up in your arms or some other way, or you can use a ramp if you want to. But jumping in and out of the bath is dangerous, so making sure they're not just doing that. And then expect that after the bath time that they will be crazy and run around the house after the drying off, which is actually one of my favorite things ever. But they may be rubbing on furniture or shaking around. So you want to get all the shaking off during, like within your bathroom. So kind of cover them with the towel. So when they do shake off, that it goes into that. You can, if you do it outside, then it's cold water, which is going to make your dog like it even less. But definitely some dogs are fine with that. But keep in mind that the water at first might be an okay temperature, but when you really get the water from under the ground, it's really cold. So dogs might be averse to that. Use shampoo that's really meant for dogs. You don't use a ton to try not to leave a residue of soap on them, so you don't have to rinse it off as well. And then also, of course, make sure you're not getting stuff into their eyes and ears. Other things would be with if you're getting a dog used to that, basically you just want to take it really slowly. So set the dog in. Let me just make sure that these questions are not, okay. All right. So just making sure that there was two questions that came in at once, and I was afraid they might be, we can't hear you. Anyway, so getting the dog used to it slowly. So dealing with the picking up part, the giving treats for that, getting that routine, doing it also in the context that you would normally do it. So if you wear something specific or don't wear anything when you give your dog bath, make sure to practice in that state. Otherwise, they know when it's really bath time and when it's just practice. And then, very slow increments. So you do some portion of it, like you get them just on the rug. You're giving treats for that, treats for standing, whatever in the bath. And then that's the end of the session. And then maybe the next one you do the same thing. And then maybe the next one after that, you add a little bit of water and then let it back out again. So very short, incremental, and build up to something pleasant. Okay. Alexis says, I'm advertising for a bat practice dogs. Have you done something like this? If so, what did you ask for? If not, what to look for? Actually, Alexis, could you clarify that question? So you're advertising, so meaning like you have a course in your school, or we do have a practice session at our school. So HIMSA Dog Training is the school that we have in Seattle. I'm not sure if this is what you're asking, so give me a follow-up on that. But basically, so we have a practice class. So we call it Bat Clinic. So this is for dogs who have already gone through our Growly Dog class or private lessons or some other way have learned bat. And then basically, we give them a chance to pair up with each other. So it's a drop-in class, but they can do reservations on our site for which day they're going to, for example. So I don't know if this is exactly what you mean, but we have this on site or on a different site, so it's a little more like real life. Okay. So at least I think this is what you mean. So Alexis, I'm following up from our last class. I want to practice with Lucy more. Okay, gotcha. So in our school, for your work with Lucy, let me just go back to the to the site. So you've already taken the BAT 101, right? So what you would, I believe, so what you would do is just go to the groups. So you can click here on groups or up in the top. And then just join the BAT group. So let me just do a search for official or do a search for BAT. So the BAT 101 course, if you have already signed up for that, you could just basically, there's a register button that would here or a request membership. If you took it at Fenzi, you get you have access to it here. So if you haven't already requested that for some reason, go to Campus Store and then click on Returning Students, and that will give you the steps for how to request the access to that. So then once you have access to it in our system, the library materials, then you can be in the group. And so that's a good way to continue your training. So I assume that we'll have people in there for a year after they've actually registered for the BAT course so that they can continue their training. All right. It is 10:15, so let me just see if there's any. Gotcha. So you're advertising. Sorry, I'm not sure if I got your question. But yeah, absolutely. So putting up posters to say, I need somebody around me to practice. We even have in our area, we have a BAT group for Alaska. So if you go to the Empowered Animals website, and I will stop soon because we're at the end of our time. But if you go to the Empowered Animals website, there is, let's see, where is it? I can't remember. Hold on. I'm just going to navigate here. Learn more. Chat groups. There we go. Learn more and then chat groups. So there's groups here that have regional back groups. So basically, you would find the one in your area or create one, which you can do on Facebook. And that's a good way to get local practice if that's what you're looking for. All right. Um, all right. So we'll stop there. So there were a couple more questions, but we'll put those in the queue for next time. So our next Q&A is going to be on Friday. So we have our Q&As every Friday. And oh, I'm sorry. I am a dork. I did not do this. So basically, if you go, um, this is the Empowered Animals website. This is for Alexis's question. Go to learn more and then, learn more and then chat groups. And that gives you the chat groups for that have the regional back groups as well. So, and there may even be one for Indiana. Nope, there isn't. Um, So you can create one on Facebook or within our group as well if you have a pro membership. All right, so now I really am wrapping up. Thank you guys for coming to this. Our next Q&A is going to be on Friday. This is recorded, so you can also review this as well. And again, you can always go to the webpage and submit more questions if you have any that occur throughout the week. That way you don't forget, and just put that in the list and I will answer them on Friday. All right. Thanks again for being here and take care. I will see you